Hello, good evening. Don't go yet. That wasn't a goodbye for us. That was a goodbye for other people. But good evening, everyone. My name is Trixie Chanko, and welcome to everyone. Leo, we have participants tonight from many parts of the world, including India and the United States. And I'm going to go ahead, if you don't mind, unless you want to say a few words, because I have questions that are already on the chat box, but I do remember now that you might want to add a little bit more to what you just said.
No, I think we could jump into the questions, Trixie.
Okay. Kasi there's so much that, is so interesting with your talk, and I'm afraid we might not be able to answer all the questions, but here we go. Mayank Agarwal, I live in India, and we face a problem of reckless psychiatric medication dispersed even by general practitioners. How can data help to address this problem? I also run a government pharmacy. What data or patient-reported experience measures or patient-reported outcome measures can I collect?
I'm not sure whether India would have some centralized prescription database. I think that would be a good place to start. I know some countries have started developing one. If you haven't, it's highly recommended. And then the first thing that I would connect that to is just death records. And between prescription database being linked to death records, I mean, that's a good start. People are always saying that, oh, we don't have data. In fact, everyone has data. It's a matter of integrating them so that you could derive new insights from them. So as regards your question there, I would again push to develop, if you don't have one yet, a prescription database for maybe not start off with one province, but link that with death records from that province. And then what I would personally do is organize a datathon, invite people who are interested in data science, bring in pharmacists, bring in GPs, bring in patient representatives, and of course, bring in the students who know how to work with data sets, and those who are interested in learning about applying data science into the field of healthcare. Because what you're gonna find is that there will be a lot of excitement. This will also be an impetus to improve the way the data is being collected and what other data can be linked. So after the death records, are reasonable, or the next data that I think would be useful would be hospitalizations. So now you're seeing what is the impact of prescription of this medication to number of hospitalizations, perhaps number of deaths. And of course, to be able to make those, those analysis, you need to think of confounders. So when you start looking at deaths, then you're gonna need some demographic data. How old are they? Hopefully that's captured already by your prescription database. And then you're gonna need some information on comorbidities. That's gonna be a bit more tricky, but there's a lot of talented people in India who are in this field. And together you could brainstorm on what the next version of that database would look like. So we have Mimic that comes from our group, and I could tell you that what Mimic looks like now is very different from what Mimic looked like in 2008 when it was first released. So if you wait until you have a perfect database, you'll never be able to release any database. Start with what you have. And we keep saying that bad data is still good data because you learn something from it. You're gonna learn how to improve the quality of that data. So don't hesitate, get the approvals, bring in the right people to engineer and to design what that data is gonna look like, and then build the community, attract the people with different expertise and different perspectives, because that's the only way to do it. Health data science is a very dynamic, rapidly evolving field. Who would have known that we would have Bloom and GPT-3 today, which are state-of-the-art for natural language processing. So the idea that you have a core faculty who will know everything about health data science is not gonna happen. you need to really leverage the brains of the hive. So there's enough brains even among the students. And that's really what we are hoping for in this datathon, is that you leverage what we call peer-to-peer learning. The faculty will not have all the expertise and perspectives, but even among the students, you will have pockets of excellence already that if you put together, you have what it takes to be able to analyze and explore the data sets that you have. So it's a long-winded answer. I hope I was able to give some advice on where to start. We're writing a book actually on how to create and curate data sets. We also have a paper on data diplomacy. How the biggest challenge is really the politics and the economics. People don't have the incentive. Like, why would I share my data? I'm going to use it later. 10 years later, they haven't used it. It's still in their server and the data is old already. So what we are finding as the most difficult barriers are really the politics of doing research, the politics of healthcare itself. And this is why we're investing heavily on changing the culture on the ground. Organizing these datathons, they're not just fun events, but we see that something is happening, change is happening. You get to witness people getting excited. You get to witness people realizing that there's so much to learn from each other. And for the longest time, they have not been taking advantage of that. So I think that we have several datathons planned in Asia. I know that our team will be going to Taiwan in February, in the Philippines, and in Thailand in October. I think that those would be that next year in 2023. That would be a good opportunity to sync up and then share our notes, share our notebooks, share our roadmaps, share all the mistakes that we've done, because we have lots of mistakes that we could share so that other people don't have to reinvent the flat tire. But those are good opportunities to meet each other in person.
Reinvent the flat tires. Thank you very much. So there's so many concepts that you've introduced: beehive learning, peer-to-peer learning, data impoverishment, colonialism, so many things that we can discuss. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the questions that are already written here, and try not to forget the questions that I have in my mind. Ting Ting Zhang is asking or mentions that your group showed that AI algorithms use in-house EHR vendors that are not regulated, and this could be problematic. Do you want to comment on this?
Yes, I'll put a link. There was a news, actually, Stat News yesterday, and we were discussing this particular topic. Right now, there's a dichotomy. There is what the FDA considers as software as a medical device, and those are AI that drives decisions. And they try to differentiate that from non-device clinical decision support tools. And these are AI that only recommend. And I really think that this dichotomy is not clear at all. The lines are too blurred. Yeah. And I think that anything that will influence the way clinicians are making decisions should be regulated, not necessarily by a central organization. In a previous paper, we suggested that this regulation should be distributed. Healthcare organizations should step up and help the central organization, whether that's the FDA or the EMA or some equivalent in a country. I think that this should be a shared responsibility. All the stakeholders should be helping steward and oversee the deployment of algorithms, because what's going to happen is that if these algorithms are biased, if they're going to perpetuate or even magnify inequities, then everyone loses. We completely waste this opportunity to improve the way we deliver care. So I think relying on one organization to regulate is not realistic. It's also perhaps not the best way. I don't think the FDA has the expertise. I don't think MIT has the expertise, but I think among the community, you will have enough perspectives and enough expertise there to be able to regulate AI. Because AI is not a final product. I think we have made that clear. Having an algorithm does not mean that your job is done, you deploy this and it's gone, because that algorithm is going to start failing within a few months, within a few years, because practice patterns change, and those changes will also change the way the features are related to the outcomes. So there has to be a process in place to continuously monitor algorithms. And that creates a problem. Very few organizations, even in the United States, have the infrastructure and have the expertise to be able to deploy and continuously monitor AI. And this is why we are concerned that AI is really going to be feasible in a handful of very well-resourced organizations. And the rest of the world would be bystanders. And even worse, perhaps labs where AI is going to fail, because you start deploying AI there, there's no process of continuous monitoring. It wasn't recalibrated on the local population. And then what's going to happen is you will have worse outcomes in those hospitals who were not participants of the training and validation of the algorithms. So there's a real concern that this is going to contribute to disparities, that AI is a new form of colonialism, because the control of AI is now going into the hands of a handful of data oligarchies. Like Amazon is partnering with the biggest payer system here in the United States. And I don't think they're going to release the data. That data is going to stick with them. So if we're not careful, I think that we're not heading the right direction. But the fact that we're having this discussion, I'm very optimistic that hopefully people will clamor for changing our course, because right now we're not heading the right direction.
Do you sometimes feel like you're Don Quixote speaking to windmills? Because, you know, it is a huge, you know, AI is global, and it's, as you said, it's moving too fast and we have to slow down. But you usually don't see those two phrases in the same sentence, AI and slow down, right? And, you know, I think it's inevitable. It's going to go on the same pace. You're just wanting to shift what you're learning, and then finding a way to regulate it. But is this like the reason why you are going around the world conducting datathons? Is this one way that you are somehow finding a better way of doing AI?
For sure. Again, we cannot prescribe how to deploy and evaluate AI. We need everyone's help. As I mentioned in the recording, we're not smart. We're only smart if we work with people on the ground who are disproportionately burdened by disease. So definitely we need more help in terms of being data ambassadors, AI ambassadors. We need to somehow get into the minds of the investors, because I hate to say this in public, but some of the investors are clueless on how AI is supposed to work.
It's true.
And they're funneling billions of dollars on the wrong business model, which is patenting AI, which I think is very dangerous. This should not be patented. I think the business revenue would come from being consultants to healthcare organizations. How do you create a data pipeline? How do you create an AI pipeline? The business model should not be selling, creating and developing and selling patents, because again, this might work in 5 hospitals, but it doesn't guarantee that the AI would work on the 6th hospital, because the 6th hospital might be different enough from the first 5 hospitals. So I'm hoping that I've convinced people that that's not the way to go. You should not be developing algorithms that you want to patent. I don't think that the FDA and the EMA are still getting it. They're still having this idea that they should approve AI, because you could approve it now, but definitely a few months from now, maybe it's already going to have unintended consequences. So again, we need to rethink. This is very different from the other technologies and health products, because it's a dynamic intervention. It needs to be continuously learning. It needs to be continuously updated and recalibrated.
let's talk a little bit about the business of medicine, because really, I think it's still true that it's money that makes the world go round. But nowadays, I also hear people saying that it's the people who have the data or who hold or control the data that are the wealthy ones. So it's now the new oil or the new gold, data is. And then you speak of data impoverishment. And also you say, people say we don't have enough data, and yet you say that there is data. It's just not. It's like when you mine for diamonds, it's raw. It's the diamond in the rough, and people just need to realize that it can be. There are precious diamonds in data. So this is a new concept, I think, of a shift, and it's going to shift at some point. That the countries that are going to be wealthy are those countries that know how to use their data in order to improve their health, and that health is truly wealth. So we're thankful that we are learning about this through people like you. And I also like the concept, what you said, that we're only as intelligent as the rest of the world. So that's also something good that we are learning from you. There's another question here, sorry. It's still thinking, I think, and one issue that I want to highlight is with regard to patient-reported outcomes. Reporting and managing the outcomes itself would change cancer treatment outcomes. Ting Ting, do you want to open your mic and open your camera?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I came from the field. I actually run a data collection and patient symptom management operation in China, which was taken over by the insurance company of China nationally. And because I'm American, I'm no longer allowed to work there. But I'm just commenting on one thing that, again, and China is making this gigantic leap into the data place. And what I'm seeing, at least from, what was really locked behind the walls, was actually US is lacking in organization and in all of that. But with regard to this patient report outcomes impacting outcomes itself, in 2017, Ethan Bosch from Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center published a study of on lung and breast cancer that actually having patients coming in and reporting symptoms extended this population's overall survival by almost 5 months, just by symptom reporting. So actually in ASCO, there's a whole collection of efforts and talking about symptom reporting and how that could be converted into this digital therapy that could expand patients' lives. So again, this is from our on the ground view. When we were running a mobile symptom reporting effort, what we were concerned with was actually impacting clinical trial data. We actually deliberately told the clinicians not to put any patient on clinical trial on the system in fear that it might impact the overall survival of patients, cancer patients. That's just my comment.
Next, thank you for sharing, Ting Ting. I think there's another thing that may be a little bit related with the comments of Ting Ting, and this has to do with patient involvement. And you did mention a new term that I hadn't heard before. Did you say citizen science? Can you explain that term?
Oh, I mean, citizen science is just involving the society at large, and definitely patient-reported outcomes is one of the ways in which to engage patients. These are very, very relevant outcomes that are currently captured in a very limited way. The way we're capturing patient-reported outcomes could also introduce bias. So what about cancer patients with cognitive deficits who are not able to articulate their symptoms? What about pediatric patients? So for sure, this needs to be part of the databases that we should be collecting as part of clinical trials and also as part of clinical care. But everything that we need to do, we have to view it with a health equity lens. Who will be disadvantaged by this system that we're going to be introducing? And for patient-reported outcomes, I would worry about elderly patients who have cognitive decline, patients with, what do you call this? Again, the pediatric patients. So always see how anything that you introduce might worsen. We always tell our students, when you're building an algorithm, imagine what is the worst scenario that could happen as a result of the deployment of your AI. And they get, I mean, I think those are good sort of checks before you keep pushing on the algorithm in terms of prospectively evaluating them and deploying them. You have to have a discussion specifically for patients who will be impacted by these algorithms. What are the worst possible scenarios that could happen in terms of unintended consequences? And if you're constantly thinking about this and what bias can be worsened as a result of the deployment, I think we're on the right track. As long as you have that in your checklist and you've thought about it, you may not be able to fix it. One thing that we are advocating for is having healthcare organizations create disparity dashboards. So in our system, we are looking at how many more poor people are dying from asthma as compared to the rich people. And when you deploy an algorithm, you would like to see what is the impact. Is the algorithm only impacting the rich people? And for that reason, is the disparities widening? If that's the case, then maybe you need to recalibrate your algorithm. So we're writing a paper on this concept of disparity dashboards. We're hoping that healthcare organizations would be interested in creating one and monitoring one. We think that this should be part of the patient safety. This should be part of the quality improvement initiatives. And I think that's the only way to really make sure that your algorithms are not having the consequences that you did not anticipate.
You also mentioned in your talk the term death valley of algorithms, if I remember right, and how you also speak of bias and how the models need to be recalibrated all the time. I wonder whether you think that isn't it enough that all these new models or algorithms are validated in different populations?
No, it's not enough. we wrote a scathing review. There's a paper that really made a splash, and it was published in Nature Medicine, and it talks about the true score, which is a prediction of clinical deterioration. And they deployed it. They prospectively evaluated it in Hopkins and several DC hospitals. And in our comment, we said that even if it validated, and I mentioned this earlier, even if it validated in 5 hospitals, it doesn't mean it's going to validate in the 6 hospitals. So you cannot just buy this algorithm and deploy it on your population without checking first. And the problem is checking it first is not as easy, because it means that you need a data pipeline to be able to check these algorithms. And that could be problematic for a lot of places without those data pipelines. So what's going to happen is that those places are just going to buy algorithms and deploy them without a good oversight in terms of what the impact is of that algorithm on clinical outcomes. So we need to think about this. As Trixie, as you mentioned, we are moving too fast, and there has to be more nuanced discussion of what this should look like, because industry cannot control this, because of course their interest is making profit, which is very different from what we want, which is, again, reducing health disparities. So somehow we need to put the brakes. And it's good, as I said, there's more and more people who are listening to us. this is definitely making it to the mainstream media that we need to slow down. Otherwise, we could be heading the wrong way.
Right. So apply the brakes. But this thing that you are trying to tell us to do, slowing down, it reminds me like when we were young, when we were small, I don't know about you, but our yayas, the people who would take care of us, would scare us and say, don't go in that room. There's a ghost there. May multo dyan, you know. Parang now I feel like that's what you're trying to tell us, meaning don't go there. Because there's something scary there. And yet that's where we're all headed. And the fact is, I wasn't the one who said to slow down. You were the one who said to slow down because I don't know enough to know what's the correct rate and what to do, right? Because, you know, we're new at this. And so what would you suggest? Or are you already doing it by example, meaning going around the world, conducting datathons, beehive learning, peer-to-peer learning, citizen science? Are these all your recommended solutions or your way of slowing down? Or maybe it's not slowing down, it's going at the same pace, but in a different direction. One
Yes,
that's more careful.
That's what we're hoping to do. We hope that people here can join, can recruit more of their colleagues, friends, and families, because we have so much ahead of us that we need to do. We are all excited, I think, of the potential to scale diagnostic capabilities, the potential to perhaps assist us with making more objective decisions. But the data that we have, that we are using to build AI, and I would credit AI for this. AI has put this mirror in front of us, and we could no longer ignore that mirror, because in that mirror, you see all the biases in their really most outlandish, what do you call this, projections. And we cannot ignore it because we have to use them to create the algorithm. So yeah. I think that this is the best gift that AI has given us. Is to be more self-critical and be more self-aware, and hopefully that will allow us to move the needle.
And while we're at it, and we really should be not slowing down, but we're going to close soon. Could you please share with us places in Asia that you and your group, your team will be visiting, so that, because there are others from other countries or ASEAN countries here?
Yes, no, I forgot. Actually, we will be in Singapore from December 1 to December 4. This will be at the National University of Singapore. I will send a list of these events to Cha, and Cha, if you could share it with the rest of the members of AeHIN. We will be in Taiwan in February, and then New Zealand is not too far. We will be there in March, and then later part of 2023 in October, we will be in Thailand and in the Philippines.
And you've been doing this for maybe a couple of years, if I'm not mistaken?
No, the first Datathon was in January of 2014. So we've been doing this. Before it was once a year, became twice a year, and now we have one every month. So.
And you go to all those places, or is it sometimes just your team?
Most of them I would go to. Like this is my passion. This is my mission. So
sure,
I try to go to as many as possible.
So you can study the effect of jet lag on aging. Just joking.
And premature death. Oh.
Yeah. So I don't know if there are other questions that anyone wants to ask.
And I have to hop off too for another meeting. And I know it's late.
Eloy, are you here? Do you want to?
Just thank you, Leo. Hi? Thank you, Leo, and we look forward to the participating in the Datathon. Thank you, Leo. Good night, everyone. Thank you, Trixie.
Okay. Good night. Thank you everyone,
night.
And see you soon in some Datathon.
Yay.
Bye.